goes through the chiller loop, the chill water loop, and becomes warmer. Then it finally reaches our heat recovery chiller. And this is where all the magic happens. Um, the process of heat transfer with our chilled water piping and our heating hot water piping pass each other. And that hot water loop gets to about 120 degrees, 125 degrees. That hot water is then used in spaces uh, like our office spaces when it gets too cold. But most importantly, one of our really popular classes are heated hot yoga classes. And if you guys haven't taken that class yet, I encourage you all to take that class. It fills instantly. Um, so not only does it heat our spaces, but it also heats our domestic hot water. I'll go into that a little later in future slides.
Okay, so Glenn touched on our roof at the Arc, but often rooftops can fall subject to the out of sight, out of mind effect. I mean, we're all in this building right now, but who knows what the top of the building looks like? I know Dave McGrew does because he's responsible for it. But they really are one of the most important surfaces when it comes to green building in a project. And this is because our rooftop has direct exposure to the sun, which means the materials we use are critical to reducing the negative environmental impacts of the building. And so for the ARC project, we had to be very specific in specifying super high quality insulation. And this has a higher cost up front, so oftentimes projects don't prioritize that, but it really does pay off in the long term because it dramatically reduces losses of interior conditioned air, and that translates to significant monthly utility cost savings over the long term. And with us being a state institution, we plan on being that building for a long time, so we will definitely realize those savings. And lastly, to reduce heat gain from the sun, we installed super bright white rooftop system. If you ever would like to walk around on the roof and check it out, you'll definitely need sunglasses because it is very bright. And this reflects solar radiation, which is something called having high planetary albedo. Plants also have high albedo instead of absorbing it like dark surfaces do. When you walk through an asphalt parking lot, you probably feel it. So this further reduces our cooling costs and prevents heat island effect in the building.
So this looks familiar. This is a slide that Glenn had spoke about earlier. We recently installed this 121 kilowatt system on our rooftop, and now our entire rooftop is fully loaded. It's kind of the commitment that Associated Students has to sustainability and decarbonization. The goal, though, is that we don't stop there. We actually have plans for the future to install more solar. So hopefully by the next Sustainability Summit, we'll have more information for you.
Okay, and now with all the information that Glenn has shared, Charlotte and Reggie, I just want to highlight that solar is very important, and of course, in our side, renewable energy not only helps you with utility cost savings, but there's this, well, and it's actually fact. When we use solar panels, we can see that 1,000 acres of forest are preserved. If you compare it with how kilowatts and megawatts work, I'm not really good at math, if I'm honest with y'all, but you can see how basically solar panels grab the energy and how it works, and how when you have the 1,000 kilowatts divided by the megawatt, it will give you the estimation of, oh, okay, we're using solar panels, but how much is that on environmental aspect? And that's why we put that it will save around 1,000 acres of forests.
Yeah, so a total of 1 megawatt of energy through the ARC, new solar at the ARC that just recently installed, and then the 640 kilowatt system, so in total. All right, so kind of tying this all back to the heat recovery chiller. Up there you see our Colmac heat pump water heaters. So I spoke a little bit about how the heating hot water loop heats up our domestic hot water. Now this is the next component to that system. The Comac boilers, or the Comac heat pump water heaters, are replacements to regular gas-fired boilers. And so there's no gas, right, inside of the building. It's all electric. So this is all new technology. The really nice thing about this is that it pulls hot energy, hot air from the outside atmosphere or from the atmosphere and puts that right back into our heating hot water loop, which then, surprisingly, heats up all of our showers and heats up all of our hand washing stations. So really amazing technology there. To the right, you see another amazing system. That's our rainwater capture. Um, those gallons, those large tanks are underneath the pavers outside of the Aztec Recreation Center and the Viejas Arena. Total of about 200,000 gallons, maybe just a little bit over that. All the site water associated to rainwater gets captured, as well as all the condensate water from all of our air handler units gets captured. And if you can imagine, this water is then used to irrigate all of our landscaping around our site, but then we also then treat it and color it to be used at our toilets and our urinals. Another fun thing to think about is that in our office spaces, we do have photocells and occupancy sensors that also adjust the VAVs at our units to turn off when there's no occupancy, but it also lowers the amount of light output that our lighting gives out in those office spaces as the sun passes by.
Okay, and now talking more about the ARC and how is it a sustainable site and what materials have been used. They have used drought-tolerant vegetation. So when you go to ARC and you see a few plants there, everything has been locally sourced, and it helps with obviously the environment that we live where there's not a lot of rain during the year. We have low or no VOC materials. VOC, if you have no idea what it stands for, is for volatile organic compounds. The ARC is FCS certified wood, and FCS stands for Forest Stewardship Council. So it's also probably a sustainable source of forest, right? And then we have double pan solar tinted and operable shading of windows for daylighting. So basically, that helps with the arc inside because obviously all of the arc is with windows around it. It's not super hot, so you can like see outside and you can have the daylight, but the heat of the sun won't be inside. So that also prevents of using a lot of AC.
Glenn, you see the lightning? That was one of the last things Glenn bought me. No. So electrification, I don't know if a lot of you know this, but the ARC is actually not the first building that Associated Students manages that's all electric. The first one is actually across College Avenue there. It's the Children's Center. The really nice thing about the Children's Center, it also has EV charging stations, PV. It also has solar thermal, so all electric facility, and it's also celebrating A's for Art. So if you guys don't know what that is, it's an annual celebration that they have that I hope that you guys can attend if you have the opportunity to. Both my daughters attended as kids when they're at the Children's Center, and now one works there at the front desk, so it's kind of fun. But, speaking of the level 2 EV charging stations, we have, I think, a total amount of 2 over at the Children's Center. Glenn is working towards more in the parking structure at South Campus, more at P12. There's also more EV charging stations on top of the 8th floor at P12. And then we have about, I think, 6 EV charging stations in lot number 8. And that primary powers our new Ford Lightning. Another commitment that AS has is to decarbonize our fleet as much as possible. So another one of our commitments that we have for the future. Oh, yes, I totally forgot. The food pantry utilizes this vehicle on a regular basis, probably 2 to 3 times a week, to pick up food from the Jacobs Foundation, I believe, is where we pick it up from. And we transport it over here for our food pantry located on the second floor. But that's one of its primary uses. So it's hitting a lot of different aspects to what Associated Students is.
Cool. So as Antonella mentioned when she was going over the lead for new construction slide, buildings contribute a large portion of global greenhouse gas emissions in this world. And within that, a majority of the environmental impact from that 40% is from actually operating and maintaining the buildings once they have been constructed. Therefore, Associated Students, we're currently working on certifying the ARC as LEED Platinum for operations and maintenance, in addition to our pre-existing new construction Platinum certification. So that's the second half of the double Platinum buzzword that we hear. And the building that we're in right now, the Student Union, was actually one of the first buildings in the CSU system to achieve this distinction. I think we were just barely beat out by a facility at Cal Poly Pomona in 2016. But this is a particularly challenging endeavor doing LEED for operations and maintenance, because while LEED for new construction takes on its own expertise and attention to detail and plenty of hard work, LEED for O&M, it doesn't provide you with the same blank canvas of starting from scratch. We rely on the collective participation of the building operators and the visitors, you all, to reduce our energy and water use, pursue zero waste through sustainable purchasing and disposal. Just like at this event, everything that we provided to you can be composted or reused. And then commuting to and from the building using sustainable transportation methods. It's a really hard thing to tell 7,000 people to come to campus walking or biking or taking transit or carpooling. So that's a big task on our plate right now, but I assure you we will achieve that Platinum certification for the ARC. And then every 5 years, we recertify all of our AS facilities so that we make sure we are maintaining our standards of excellence and sustainability.
Okay, so thank you everybody for hearing us about how proud we are and how hard all of these people have worked for LEED certification, especially for AS facilities. And yeah, those are our contacts if you want to come and talk to us more about it, or if you need to contact us. Thank you.
And now it's lunchtime.
You close it out. You are a much more responsible steward of the microphone.
No.
So.
Lunchtime.
All right. Second question was leaf blowers. First question was direct. Madeline, do you want to answer or do you want to take it, Glenn?
Direct access energy we purchase meets the California Renewable Portfolio Standard. So that's a requirement. The Chancellor's Office actually buys it for multiple campuses, and they require, we currently are purchasing it, the people who have the contract is Shell Energy, and that they commit to meet the California Renewable Portfolio Standard. That standard right now is somewhere, I just don't know the exact, but it's somewhere in the 35 to 40% range. Right. Mm-hmm. Let me answer your second question first. So the second question is, I would say that virtually all of the blowers and trimmers have all been converted to electricity. There might be I've seen a random one here or there from a unrelated department, but from the actual central grounds, they've converted all those to electric. And the answer is that it's a long answer, but the answer is we just completed, the university in partnership with the associated students, we just completed a carbon neutrality plan for San Diego State, and moving towards complete carbon neutrality is part of the plan, but it's a multi-hundreds of millions of dollar project over time.
Okay, we got a question online. What specifically will happen to the current North Life Sciences building, and what is the timeline of this happening? Do you want to take a shot at it, Amanda?
I can definitely take that. So the plan under our new life sciences building is we will build that building, and then we will do what is defined as mothball. We don't really know exactly what mothball of that building means, but what it means is we will essentially decommission a lot of the HVAC units and make it not habitable. And then we will work toward funding a revitalization of that building, probably for academic swing space as we do new construction. But that is the plan right now. And it will be open, I don't know when it will be open for actual swing space, but it will be decommissioned immediately after move-in fall of 27.
And I think we've got a question out
Bob,
in the
we have a-
audience with a microphone.
Bob, we have a question from Lori.
Hi, thank you so much for this. My name is Lori Saldana. I'm an alumni of the university, and I also was a co-author in the legislature of AB 32, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act, that got us started on what you're doing here, and it's so great to see the progress you're making to decarbonize this campus. My question is, how off-grid are you on campus? I was teaching here in 2011 when we had a massive blackout, and the campus stayed online, which I think is the energy future we need for the entire region. So can you talk a little bit about how you're off-grid and avoiding the gouging of our current investor-owned utility, SDG&E, by making yourselves independent of the transmission and other energy that is produced by Semper and SDG&E?
It's a complicated equation. The power outage, you recall, we had the benefit of what I like to call one of the world's largest emergency backup power systems, also known as our cogeneration system. The challenge is that's a naturally gas-fired system. So it's hard to electrify a campus when your emergency backup system is natural gas. And I think it's fair to say the battery technology to operate something on the level of 12 to 15 megawatts is not really something that's in the commercial market yet. So it's a challenge we're looking at. We've talked about a variety of strategies, is talking about, can we phase our building operations in such a way that we can remain operational on a reduced load if we know we don't have the full power output of the cogeneration system in the future as we decarbonize. I'll just say it's a problem we talk about at least monthly and probably more often like weekly. And as a lot of things in the university system, these are obligations that don't inherently come with funding. So as we talk about a fully electrified campus, I don't want you to be into the impression that is somehow a cheaper to operate campus. It won't be. So we've got to figure out all that math along the way as well. Yes. Hold on 1 second. We've got a microphone coming to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Courtney. I'm an alum and have been involved in all this, so it's good to be back. I had a question that goes off the intermittency issue, and love that there's all the solar and everything that's able to power all these systems. I'm wondering if there's any planning to help that intermittency issue, like when are peak times when the campus demand is highest for energy use, and what sort of differences in demand do you face especially with the Mission Valley campus, is there any plans to, when you're establishing that new energy system, meet those peak loads with new technology, maybe funded by IRA or other solutions?
I'll break it up in pieces. The Mission Valley site is primarily private developments. So those private developers, LPC West, Avalon Bay, Chelsea Development, they will be making their own operational and business decisions on how do they keep those buildings operational. There, as you probably know, there's increasing requirements for on-site solar for projects of all types, so they'll be part of that. As far as intermittency on the campus, maybe I'll defer to Glenn. We've got the same problem a lot of enterprises do. Our peak load is not when we generate peak solar power. So there's a very serious time disconnect between when we absorb peak load and when we produce peak power. And our backup system for the foreseeable future is going to be either our cogen unit, which will probably be phased out over time as part of decarbonization, or the public utility grid. There just isn't commercially available at a price we could remotely consider affording for backup power that can mitigate those kind of swings. You want to add to that, Glenn? Okay.
We have McKenna here.
Since the mic's right here, might as well. Everything that's happening with SDSU is like amazing, and obviously we have the dream team here. I was just curious about the collaboration taking place with other CSUs, with the learnings that you all have had, or vice versa, and just kind of that ripple effect going on there.
There's a regular cohort of call them affinity groups. So there's energy managers and sustainability managers across the CSU that meet regularly. There's transportation and alternative transportation advocates that meet regularly. There's people that fill the role. I'm about the only one we call the university architect, but every university has somebody like me, and we meet together regularly. Having said that, we are not McDonald's franchises, right? So we all are solving very different problem sets. Some of our solutions and opportunities are similar, some are not. Trying to figure out how to do more with less is a recurring conversation we all have. So I'd say it's an ongoing conversation. The good news is it's a frequent conversation. I think we had a question in the second row.
Pat?
Hi. Two questions. One is there any kind of a plan to put a roof on the stadium? I just think we need one. You know, both for shade and also for rain. So is there a plan?
We designed it to incorporate a shield, let's call it, not a roof of the building because it's a natural grass field and that grass does require daylight. But like you see in a lot of MLS or European Premier Leagues, we do have a conceptual plan for putting that roof on there. At the time, we thought it was $35 million. I think that's laughable. I think it's probably more like a $70 million project to do today. And to be honest, nobody is willing to pay for it. So the MLS had told us they won't play in a building that doesn't have a canopy. Lo and behold, they decided Snapdragon is a pretty awesome stadium and they're playing in it without the canopy.
I'm not going to comment further on that. The other thing is, I know part of the wildlife mitigation was to put up bat houses. Have they been populated yet?
Try the question again, please. I'm not sure I followed it.
I understand that there were bat houses. I'm into bat conservation. Oh. So the bat houses were put in the Mission Valley area to help mitigate the impact on wildlife. I'm curious, have they moved in?
Mr. Jackson.
Correct. We did install bat boxes there in Mission Valley, and they're still there in the park today on the very old light poles. But as of the last survey that we did, they hadn't been populated. So we went through a really delicate process to make sure that when Qualcomm Stadium was demolished, that we sealed up any locations where the bats had previously been, made sure that those bat boxes were provided for the bats, but they moved on to other locations, and I don't know that they are using them, but they're still there and still available if they ever want to come back.
It probably helps to remember the stadium, believe it or not, was a pretty isolated space most days of the year. There was probably only, 20 days a year when there was much activity there. And Mission Valley is turning into a much more active environment than it was at the time. So I don't think it has the same quasi-rural feel that the bats were partly attracted to.
Bob, I have a question here from Elizabeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I actually have two questions. The first being, in a previous question in this session, there was something about decommissioning a building, and you had said something about mothball. Am I hearing that correctly? Like the thing that goes in the closet?
Yes. That is a term we use because we don't know any better what it means. So North Life Sciences would be an exceptionally difficult building to demolish. It's in the center of everything. It connects to life sciences. It connects to the Shiley Biosciences Center. It's in the center of a campus. So the demolition would be enormously disruptive to the university. Plus, it's got good bones. It's got a robust concrete structure. That'll be 30+% of the cost of a new building. So it makes a lot more sense to keep the concrete of the structure intact and retrofit it when the money comes in the future. When will that money come? I have no idea. The state has pretty much gotten out of the business of building free buildings for universities. So what we're going to do is safely close the building in such a way that we don't keep putting our faculty, students, and staff in an environment with decayed facilities and non-code compliant components in a safe manner. So it'll be locked. We're not going to be using it. And then we will begin the process of trying to figure out the funding and the process to reopen it for a future purpose at a future day. And I have no idea when that next part of it will happen.
I also have questions about accessibility amid all of these changes, but I don't
Okay.
want it to be aggressive or inflammatory, so I think that would be a better question for after the session. Where can I find you?
I will say everything we ever build is designed to be fully compliant both with California Title 24's access compliance requirements and, of course, the federal American with Disabilities Act. And every one of our projects is reviewed specifically by access experts at the Department of State Architect to ensure that we've met those obligations. And we consider that, I would say, our minimum standard for new facilities. And then we occasionally go beyond that. You know, door actuators are not a code requirement. We would never build a new building without them. Interior door actuators are not a requirement. It's rare anymore that we would do a new building that doesn't have door actuators for restroom facilities, for example, to make sure people can get to them. So I won't say we're doing perfect. I know we're not. We try.
It was more around like evacuation planning in the event of an emergency, which the standard on it is basically find a stairwell and wait for somebody to find you, which I acknowledge is a huge problem with ADA, but
I'm going to admit I don't feel qualified to answer that at the moment, and I'm also being given the wrap-up signal.
yeah, I wasn't trying to.
All right. So I'd love
All
to
right.
thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.
All right, let's give another round of applause for our speakers in the green building session. I'm sure that only piqued your interest in SDSU's transition to net zero and decarbonizing the system of today as we approach the future. There are activities that are in the lobby, and our session after lunch, session 3, will be focused on the climate action plan. So please join us at 12:30. That will be when we'll have another drawing from the Mission Bay Aquatic Center. There'll be class packages given out during that drawing, and then we'll start our session at 12:40. So back here at 12:40 for session 3 on the climate action plan. 10 minutes before, if you're interested in your red ticket and maybe you won a prize to do a class package at the Mission Bay Aquatic System. Remember to check out those activities in the lobby, and see you in just a little bit.